There were a bunch of sources of the chemicals in the water, but one of the big ones was an industrial dry cleaning service that was just dumping TCE and PCE and other industrial solvents into the water. And again, as I told you, I don't even think the government disputes now that they learned about that well before they started giving compensation to victims, first through the VA and then through the Camp Lejeune Justice Act in 2022. Interestingly, in the legal process that we're going through now, a lot of the best scientific evidence that we have was commissioned by the United States government. The ATSDR did studies about the water at Camp Lejeune and the different conditions that it was causing, and a comparison of the people who spent time on base in the most contaminated areas and comparing their rates of these conditions to people in the background population, and showing much higher elevated risks of these various conditions. So we're using the government's own evidence to show that these people were injured, and yet remarkably, the litigation position of the Department of Justice right now is no one is entitled to compensation. Congress passed this big repeal of sovereign immunity and said, go ahead and sue the United States, but we plaintiffs haven't proven anything yet, even though we're using the government's own documents to show that these people were actually injured.
Welcome, both of you guys, to I Came with Fire podcast. It's a pleasure to speak to you, Virginia. We were talking a little bit beforehand how you were a dependent for the military. Your husband was in the Marine Corps, you said. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. And then, Mr. Keller, you are Miss Robinson's representation, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. A little bit of technical difficulty there, but we're back at it. You were about to talk to us about your history and sort of how you got to be in and around the Camp Lejeune area, and eventually what would lead up happening to you.
My father would join the Marine Corps. Then my father got stationed here back in the late 50s. 1959, we moved on to base housing. Then we moved to South Carolina. Then we came back to North Carolina, because I have two younger brothers. One was born in South Carolina, the other one was born in North Carolina, Camp Lejeune.
Okay.
In 1978, I developed a form of leukemia because I had to have 18 transfusions of blood. Then I was fine after that. That 78 and 79, they kept me in the hospital to find out, just to moderate it, to get me balanced. Then I got married in 1980 to a Marine.
Okay.
We lived off base housing, but we spent all our time on base because I picked him up. We only had one car. Then in 81, I gave birth to a daughter. My daughter was born with, she had a tumor in her spine. They operated on her. And then later it turned into bladder cancer. She got bladder cancer. She died at the age of 32.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Then 1989, I developed cervix cancer while pregnant with my third child.
Okay.
Wow. I went in for my checkup after having the baby, and that's when they found out I had cervix cancer. Nobody knew it during the pregnancy because I was high risk. So they didn't monitor me like they should have monitored. They couldn't put stuff inside to find out. And 1989, from 1989, I was, from 79 to 89, I was cancer free. In 89 to 2010, I developed cervix cancer, or not cervix, colon cancer. They took my ascending colon out of me. Nobody knew. I went to 3 doctors. They kept saying, "Oh, you just got a stomach virus. It'll surface by itself."
Right.
Then all of a sudden, I went to a different doctor, and she goes, "Have you had a CAT scan? Have you had this?" She did the CAT scan. Next thing we know, I had a tumor in my ascending colon the size of a baseball.
Oh my gosh.
And nobody caught it. From 2010 to to 2015, I got breast cancer in my left breast.
Mm.
They did the surgery on me. I was fine. Then 2023, that was my happy year. I had a doctor that was in New Bern, and he sent me all the way up to Duke because I had cirrhosis of the liver and I'm a non-drinker.
Okay.
And so they were trying to figure out how they could do it. Something showed up on a CAT scan that I had to go to, and he sent me to Duke, and we found out I had liver cancer. When they did the CAT scan on me, they found out I had kidney cancer, liver cancer at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
And then I had to come down and have my mammogram in New Bern. They found out I had breast cancer in my right breast. So I had 3 cancers at one time. Duke took care of 2 of them, and New Bern took care of the other one. In March of 24, I had a liver transplant.
Okay.
And now I'm cancer-free so far. Knock on wood.
Wow. That is absolutely incredible. I can't imagine having to live through something like that over and over and over again. I have a good friend. He's also in the Air Force who survived leukemia a few times, but you have gone through all these different things and you've had to have pieces of your body removed. That's terrible. I'm just curious, when did the pieces start getting put together that this is linked to Camp Lejeune and your time in that area?
Whenever I went through colon cancer, my doctor up in New Bern, he told me, he says, this isn't right. Because, see, my husband had lung and melanoma cancer.
Okay.
He died in 2014. My daughter died 5 months after him.
Sorry to hear that.
And then my father had Parkinson's disease when he passed away.
Okay.
All of these are Camp Lejeune diseases. But the worst part for me is that I've gone through so many different cancers. I'm one of 5 children. And I'm the only one who had cancer. My sister just now has cancer. But it's female cancer.
Okay.
So I'm a strong person.
Mm-hmm.
I have the belief that I'm going to beat Camp Lejeune.
Right.
Because as far as I'm concerned, Camp Lejeune never told us what was going on. I worked on Camp Lejeune for 25 years as a civilian employee. I was a federal employee.
Okay.
And it just, I mean, nobody told anything to us about this stuff. Nobody told us. And when I got sick in 78, Camp Lejeune's answer was, oh, we got to get her to Portsmouth. So I was medevaced from Camp Lejeune to go to Portsmouth to find out what was wrong with me. Because Camp Lejeune did not know.
So earlier
okay, Am I doing okay?
You're doing great. You're telling your story, and that's what's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Just a minute ago, you said that these were Camp Lejeune diseases. That sounds a lot like there are other people who've had some of the same things happen to them, right?
Yes.
And these strings have all been sort of tied back to Camp Lejeune. I take it that there are a lot of other people who are experiencing this alongside of you and maybe other people involved in this situation, but this goes all the way back to the 50s. So it sounds like this over decades that maybe you're talking about hundreds of people, maybe more, who have had these experiences. Let me back this up here. What has been any sort of official response from Camp Lejeune, and then has there been any indication of what may have caused this? I feel like I know that Camp Lejeune has an artillery range, and I understand that artillery and some of these other things have chemicals in them that are not safe, and I don't know if perhaps there's some leaching going on, but are you able to sort of break that down for us? I'm not sure exactly what maybe legally you can get into or whatever, but just kind of curious where this
chemicals. It was
chemicals?
the chemicals that was used on base.
Okay.
Brandon, let me, if I could,
Yes, please.
Virginia is exactly right. It's the chemicals that were on base. Let me set the stage for you, because you said hundreds of people in Miss Robinson's situation. Unfortunately, it's hundreds of thousands of people in Miss Robinson's situation. So terrible chemicals like benzene, were in the water at Camp Lejeune as a result of dumping that was occurring and seeping into the groundwater there. And this happened over the course of some 35 years, starting in the 1950s. So when you're drinking a glass of water from the faucet, when you're brushing your teeth, when you're bathing every night, you're getting exposed to these known human carcinogens and known chemicals that cause diseases like Parkinson's and neurodevelopmental harm. And so the people who were on this base, primarily Marines and their families, but also civilians, were being exposed to this water. And the government, for many, many decades, said nothing about it. Finally, there was an uproar because people were realizing if you worked at Camp Lejeune, if you lived at Camp Lejeune, you were way more likely to have these sorts of conditions. And finally, the VA started to offer medical benefits associated with you being on base, but they still didn't give any compensation for pain and suffering. The sort of trials and tribulations that you just heard Miss Robinson going through, losing a child in her early 30s, which no mother should ever have to bury a kid at that age. They didn't offer anything like that until finally in 2022, so long after the last person left Marine Base Camp Lejeune with poisoned water, Congress finally got its act together, and with 87 votes in the Senate, so pretty bipartisan, including then Senator and now Vice President J.D. Vance, they passed the Camp Lejeune Justice Act, which repealed sovereign immunity, which is just fancy legal jargon for saying you now have permission to sue the United States and actually get compensation the way any other person would be able to get compensation if a private party injured them in this way. But to this day, so 3 years after the Camp Lejeune Justice Act was passed, where Congress obviously intended for people like Ms. Robinson to get compensation, there are now some 400,000 claims pending at the Navy from people who claim that they were injured by the water there. And only a couple of hundred of those claims have been processed and resulted in a payment for victims. So at the pace that we're currently going, it's going to take 1,000 years for the government of the United States to finally make good on the promise of the Camp Lejeune Justice Act. And so we're going on shows like yours to get the word out so that people hear Ms. Robinson's story. She's not looking for a handout. She's not looking for a free government program. She's looking for compensation for injuries that her government did to her while she and her husband and her family were wearing the uniform of the United States and serving their country. That, we think, is clearly what Congress wanted when it passed this legislation. And it's my belief that the Trump administration and President Trump care a very good deal about the people who wore the uniform of the United States, and they're going to want to take care of these people and do the right thing. We've given almost $200 billion to aid the people of Ukraine in their fight against Russia. We can give a fraction of that to the people of this country who sacrificed so much for the safety and securities and freedoms that we Americans enjoy.
I can't agree more. And I was on active duty for almost 15 years, and every installation that I have been stationed at, I have found out that I've spent time in buildings that were asbestos ridden, and I'm talking like years, operating in and out of these buildings, going into buildings for trainings that had asbestos, finding out that the water, don't drink the water in this building, it's bad, or finding out I've already done that or whatever. And there's so many other military members who've had similar experiences with this. I mean, I had some good friends when I was stationed in Montana who found out that the building that we lived in, and they let me know this, had asbestos in it. And I lived in that building for almost 3 years while I was an airman. And so this is just a problem, I think, that is riven throughout the military and probably just any government installation in general. But it's always surprising to me to hear how long these things take to come to fruition. And it to me, in my opinion, it would have to take an active evasion to get away from trying to take accountability for what's going on. I mean, is this something that, I don't know what the sort of the process you guys have gone through on the legal end, but to go back in time and look at, maybe some early reports of this, and has there been any attempt that you guys have uncovered to to from the maybe the U.S. Navy or the DoD at large to hide this? Have you guys seen?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so.
I'm afraid that the answer is yes. That's right.
Okay.
I was told when I first started my stuff. I started this in 2013. I was going through the VA.
Yeah.
My husband was alive then. We started with the VA because at one time my husband, my daughter, and myself was all going through cancer at the same time. We were each other's caretakers. But the whole thing about it, when you were saying about asbestos in the water, that's true on almost all the military. The building I worked in on base was built in 1941. You know it had asbestos.
Yeah.
But they all they could do was post something on the wall saying this building has asbestos.
Yep.
Just work at your risk. But the whole thing about it is when I went to the VA, and I first started with them. Yes, we were getting letters. We were getting letters frequently. I was told to go to a VA hospital and have my evaluation. For me to be evaluated, okay? At the time I was to go to be evaluated, I was cancer free. I went to a VA hospital, was evaluated, and then they told me after that when I came here to start going to Camp Lejeune, or to the Jacksonville one, I was told, oh no, you're a dependent, or you're a civilian, you can't come here. You're not seen here. I said, I was told to come here. I even brought the letters with me. So the VA gaffed us off. And that made me mad because the VA is supposed to take care of the veterans.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Mr. Keller, you were saying that you had found evidence of them covering up. What is some of that information? Are you able to talk about it, or?
Yeah, it's in the public domain, and actually, I don't think the government even denies now that it knew about the poison chemicals in the water long before the Camp Lejeune Justice Act in 2022. They discovered this in the 90s and 2000s, and they finally agreed that veterans should be able to get benefits at the VA with presumptions that they were injured by the water at Camp Lejeune so that they would be able to get medical care at an affordable price. So the government itself, I think, acknowledges that this was hidden from the people who were injured for many decades. And now that it has finally come to light and Congress has acted, now we're in the fight, the protracted fight to get compensation for these victims. But there's no dispute that the government knew about this many, many years ago.
Yep.
Come back to the 90s. Wow.
We knew when we lived on base you could taste the water difference. My mother boiled water for her to make tea for us. She would boil water just to cook with. Everything was in boiled water, and it still didn't help. Yeah. Like he said, we had to get showers. We had to brush our teeth.
Right.
I'm sorry, I have dentures. I've had dentures since I was 35 years old.
Wow.
Because my gums deteriorated.
So clearly, you're experiencing this, your family individually. There had to be other families on base experiencing this simultaneously. And I just can't imagine with knowing the way the military works and, hey, I'm having this issue at home, right? The water tastes weird. You've got hundreds of sailors, Marines, whatever, reporting this to their leadership who live on base. And this is running up the chain of command, that this is just a total lack of accountability. And I guess
the chain of command fell through.
Right.
They never followed up.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah. For decades though. I mean, and I know how many times changeover happens with leadership. It's every couple of years. Maybe it's just every year, sometimes. And just to me, thinking about how many people over several decades failed American service members and their families about this. And just, I can't even imagine, why somebody would think it's okay to not run this up and say, hey, this is unsafe. We're not letting people move into base housing anymore. I mean, my question to you too, that sort of like begs the question, are people that lived off the installation of Camp Lejeune experience this as well? Or is it contained to just the military housing?
I think so far what I've heard, it's been only on base.
Okay.
But what people don't realize is base housing was Midway Park, Tuawa Terrace, and Berkeley Manor, and Watkins Village.
Okay.
Paradise Point was for the officers. But the whole thing about it, it's all Midway Park was off base by itself. But I can tell you from whenever some of the horror stories that I was told, 10 women that lived on one road in Midway Park all had miscarriages. It was like in 2 or 3 days apart. They all miscarried their babies. So that was the water. They knew it was the water. Nobody else could explain anything. Camp Lejeune Hospital wasn't explaining nothing to nobody. This is
Brandon,
how smart they are.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Brandon, you know this as someone who served. The water at Camp Lejeune was the contaminated source of all of these problems, so it didn't spread beyond the base.
Okay.
But a base like Marine Base Camp Lejeune has lots of civilian contractors who are constantly on the base. They have to take a shower, they have to drink water, they're going to be exposed to that. And when you get that exposure over the course of years, as opposed to a couple of days, because you're a repeat player and you're constantly coming back to the installation, that can give you the same sort of chemical exposure that causes these problems. So even if you didn't live there, if you spent enough time there and were exposed to the water there, you could have developed one of these conditions. So it's primarily military families that were living on base, but it's not exclusively military families. It's those who had to come to the base to work.
Well, it sort of also makes me wonder if some of these people who've had these diseases because of chemicals, if they've gone on to have children, I mean, is it possible to pass this along because of the damage that's done to you? Yeah, at the cellular level? Wow.
As Ms. Robinson just said, miscarriages were a common problem on the base at a much higher rate than the background risk in the population. You heard the tragic story that Ms. Robinson told about her daughter being born with cancer. You know, you're drinking the water as a mother while your baby is in utero. It is going to impact your offspring.
It's just, this is it's absolutely terrible to hear about something like this. It's antithetical to everything that you're told when you're coming into the military. And then I think something that a lot of people hear and believe about the military is, you know, one of the first things is integrity and honor, right? And then accountability. Like, these are attributes that you think the military embodies. And this is, there's so many examples now coming out of things like this, and this isn't the only installation that's had issues in this vein. And to hear just how many people who wore the uniform who decided to pass the buck on to others, that's not an embodiment of integrity. That's not an embodiment of accountability or honor or any of these things. It's despicable. And just to think that it's a shame too, because as a population, the American citizen has this belief in their U.S. military. There's a ton of support. There is this belief, like I said, that the military embodies these morals and ethics that I was just outlining. And then to find out that this is what's happening and how they're treated, and then the issues that you dealt with the VA. Obviously, there's so many stories of people and the nightmares they've had to go through with Veterans Affairs. But it's really disheartening to hear that it just someone over and over and over again was passing the buck and not taking care of this issue and letting people move into that. You guys left, and then somebody else moved into your house, and they kept drinking the water, and different Marines going out and staying in the barracks, or filling up a canteen and going out to the field and drinking the water. And it's just, I don't know. You said it was chemicals. Is it directly related to? Do you guys know the artillery range that's out there from leaching, or where did the chemicals start to seep in and poison the well, so to speak?
I might have been the piping because of some of the housing, but some of it was because the base cleaners. They had a cleaning service on base, and their chemicals from the cleaning service for your uniforms and stuff was a problem.
Gotcha.
The one thing I can tell you that I know for a fact, Camp Lejeune, they had their own water sources. Everything was based, you got it through the tap.
Yep.
Out in Camp Pendleton in California, you get 5-gallon bottles of water delivered to your house to use because of everything from Camp Lejeune. We had a doctor, and his name is Greg Murphy. He was a urologist up in Greenville.
Okay.
He's now our state senator because we voted for him. He is the one that first brought it and started working with this because he had so many patients that had kidney problems. And he didn't understand why there was such a problem, and then he dug deeper. But, I mean, if it wouldn't have been for Greg Murphy, I don't think anybody would have known what was going on.
Right.
Because they kept this quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I got sick in 78, nobody said anything.
Yeah.
It was like so hush-hush.
Mm-hmm. Through the legal process, have you guys ever been able to find any like evidence of, when I say conspiracy, like conspiracy to cover this up in any sort of military documents or anything like that? Maybe things that the hospitals were passing along to, camp leadership or anything like that?
Yeah, so Brandon, back to your earlier question, there were a bunch of sources of the chemicals in the water, but one of the big ones was an industrial dry cleaning service that was just dumping TCE and PCE and other industrial solvents into the water. And again, as I told you, I don't even think the government disputes now that they learned about that well before they started giving compensation to victims, first through the VA and then through the Camp Lejeune Justice Act in 2022. And interestingly, in the legal process that we're going through now, a lot of the best scientific evidence that we have was commissioned by the United States government. The ATSDR did studies about the water at Camp Lejeune and the different conditions that it was causing, and a comparison of the people who spent time on base in the most contaminated areas and comparing their rates of these conditions to people in the background population, and showing much higher elevated risks of these various conditions. So we're using the government's own evidence to show that these people were injured, and yet remarkably, the litigation position of the Department of Justice right now is no one is entitled to compensation. Congress passed this big repeal of sovereign immunity and said, go ahead and sue the United States, but we plaintiffs haven't proven anything yet, even though we're using the government's own documents to show that these people were actually injured. So the litigation position of the United States right now is one that I hope changes over time, and my hope is also that civilian leadership in the political branches, the top of the executive branch, from the president to the attorney general and the head of civil, I think they need to step up and say, enough is enough. These people have waited long enough. People like Ms. Robinson have suffered long enough. It's time that we do the right thing here. And that's all that most of my clients want. They're not sorry that they served in the military, or that their husbands or their brothers or their family members served in the military. They're proud of their military service. They just want the government to take responsibility and do right when they did wrong in the past. That's all anybody's asking for.
Right. Well, how many instances are there of things like this? It took an incredible amount of effort just to get the burn pit registry to be something that's official for folks who deployed for 20 plus years during the GWAT. And, I mean, I can't tell you how many times you had mentioned before, Virginia, about how at Camp Pendleton, there are 5 gallons of water brought to homes daily. Even when I had mentioned before we'd started recording, my dad was active duty. When we lived overseas in Germany, our apartment building, every day we could go to a location on base and get bottled water to drink. And I mean, these apartment complexes had been there since post World War II, right around the time, right after GIs were able to start moving their families over to the Rhineland-Palatinate there in the Kaiserslautern military community area. And then when I was in Montana, there was a few different times. This is at Malmstrom Air Force Base, where there are ICBMs. So there's a lot of chemicals and things that are used there, and other things you can get exposed to. But there were times when we were told in advance, the water is going to be bad, don't drink it. And even when I in process and was given a barracks room, I was told, don't drink the water out of your tap, don't drink the water in the shower if you can avoid it. Don't brush your teeth. Recommend brushing your teeth with bottled water. Any of these things. It's just the barracks that's a problem. If you go to the dining facility on base or any of the squadron buildings, the water there is fine. Even the weapons storage area where the weapons are stored and maintained, right? There's water down there that they say is safe to drink, which I've always been skeptical of. But this is just it's really unfortunate to hear, and this is tied back to, like you said, a dry cleaning service that was allowed to dump waste and get people sick, right? Which I'm sure that dry cleaning service probably doesn't even exist anymore, right? The people individually to hold them accountable, but then to hear, like you said, Mr. Keller, how you're using the government's own evidence against them, and they're still denying, saying that you don't have the right to, you're not entitled to compensation. That's totally bogus. This is a story that's repeated over and over again by military service members and their families seeking compensation, or even acknowledgement of the things they breathed in, or things that they lived around in burn pits and deployed locations. Other installations with problems like this. I know Hawaii was another one. I can't remember which installation it was that has an issue with their drinking water, and this has to do with the Navy as well. So this is the norm, unfortunately. And to hear that it's the norm is, like I said before, is extremely disheartening. And I can't imagine what it's like, and I feel so bad for you that you had to go through this, and the people that you've lost in your life, and the other people, like you said, the hundreds of thousands of people, Mr. Keller, who've had to endure something like this. I mean, this is a nightmare. These are things that when you think of other countries, third world countries, this is like things that you may attribute to their governments and their militaries, the people that have to go through, and the government denying people compensation. But it's right here in the United States, right, which again is supposed to embody these morals and ethics that I mentioned, integrity, accountability, these things. And to see it not happening is, why do you think so many people are upset when so much money, like you said, Mr. Keller, goes to a country like Ukraine for weapons and bombs and missiles and things like that, but you can't even take care of the service members who have dedicated their lives, and their family have dedicated their lives to the supporting that service member, and they can't even get compensation or acknowledgement or be taken care of? I mean, that's despicable.
Amen. And I just want to add on top of that to everything you said, which is completely correct. A lot of these conditions take a long time to develop, right? Cancer doesn't happen overnight, even if you're exposed to toxic chemicals. And, this ended, the contamination of the water at Camp Lejeune ended in the 80s. So you now have people like Miss Robinson who aren't as tough as her and aren't as lucky as her, who are in a lot worse shape. And I hate to say this, but we represent a lot of the families who suffered at Camp Lejeune, tens of thousands of them, and we lose somebody almost every day. And so we have to substitute the name of a client for their estate because they've succumbed to their injuries. And so it's really important that shows like yours get the word out, again, so that the political leadership can hear these messages, because I want these people to get justice in their lifetimes. They deserve to get their compensation before they're 6 feet under. And unfortunately, just given the timetable of what we're talking about here, and when these injuries started to be imposed in the 50s, going all the way through the 1980s, you're dealing with a population here oftentimes that doesn't have a lot of time left.
Yeah. Well, and it's a terrible thing that this is a political issue. It shouldn't even be a political issue. This should be some of the biggest no-brainer assistance that you could think of. I'm also thinking of the 9/11 first responders as well, who had to fight for their compensation and acknowledgement of what they went through, and the things that they were exposed to, cleaning up the demolition in that area, or the destruction those areas. It's just it's crazy to me how much we're not taken care of as first responders and service members by the government. Just because it is apparently a political issue, even though it shouldn't be. Just out of curiosity, who helps you guys the most, or who do you guys are able to lean on in the U.S. government, Mr. Keller, to help out and raise attention to this issue and get assistance?
Yeah, so I agree that it shouldn't be a partisan issue. I will say that it was tough dealing with the previous administration, and I'm not trying to play politics. This is not Democrat or Republican, but I think the Biden Department of Justice really dug in its heels, and I'm hopeful that with this new administration, with Pam Bondi as the Attorney General, with President Trump, with real Marines like J.D. Vance as the Vice President of the United States, I think you're going to see greater respect for people who served, and my hope is it's going to break the logjam. So I think that this administration has a golden opportunity to take care of people that everybody agrees should be taken care of. Again, we live in a very partisan political environment right now. It's hard to imagine anything getting 87 votes in the United States Senate, but that's what the Camp Lejeune Justice Act got. Republicans and Democrats came together on this one, and so I think the Trump administration should heed that bipartisan call to take care of people like Miss Robinson.
Absolutely.
Can I say something?
100%.
We had hurricane in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember her name now. And it tore out Asheville. It demolished Asheville. Okay? It demolished a lot of other places in South Carolina and Georgia. I want you to know, if Pete Hegseth, I know he was the Fox News reporter, but if he could go to Asheville and talk to those people, he can get off his butt now as the, what is he, Department of
Secretary
Defense?
of Defense. Secretary of Defense. Mm-hmm.
So this is what he needs to
Certainly.
do, push this forward.
Well, he also was a part of the VA as well. That was one of his
Right.
prior occupations. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he
No,
was
I agree.
Army.
Yeah. He was a commissioned officer in the Army. You're right. Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, I mean, there's so many people that have gone through what you're going through. Do you guys have, like, support system-wise community for you guys that you, yeah?
It's called Camp Lejeune Water Survivors.
Mm-hmm.
It's a website.
Okay.
And you can join it and talk about it, and then that's how we find out who passes away. There's a gentleman, his name is Jerry Ensinger. He put it together. His daughter died. They just had her anniversary for her death. And I believe she died from leukemia.
Dang.
But she was just a young girl. I mean, she went to school with my daughter. And
Yeah.
I mean, he pushed this. He pushed this mess with Camp Lejeune because he swore it was Camp Lejeune who did it because he lived in base housing.
Yeah.
But the Camp Lejeune Water Survivors, you can find out information from them. They're talking about everything that happens. They're pushing people to get a hold of your representatives for your state because they want them to push for this to happen. We need this thing to go through. The longer we sit on this, the worse it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Well, something you were just saying made me think about like how most of the housing, or a lot of the housing, at least on Air Force installations, is privatized now with a couple of different companies. And I'm not going to say any of these company names, but I know for a fact that I have had friends, and not me specifically, I'll just say this, right? And so this is second party information told to me, but have had issues trying to report, sicknesses and things like that.
Right.
And they're told now, well, you need to go through the private company to make a report. And there's almost this, I guess, like it seems intentional to have this divide so that they don't have to get involved. And when I say they, I mean military leadership to get involved. But I think that they have a responsibility to take care of service members, even though some of these companies are private, right? Like the DoD is making these deals and getting into these contracts with these private companies to come on base to provide a service for service members. And, I know that the DoD and the U.S. government in general is notorious for getting themselves into terrible contracts with companies that come on base to provide services, whatever it is cleaning, like you had mentioned before, with dry cleaning or housing or food services or whatever. And then they sort of paint themselves into a corner when problems start happening because they can't get out of or back out of a contract and won't go through the process to try to get out of these contracts with these private companies. So it just kind of makes me wonder if some of that is at play or was at play at the time, with why there was no accountability. No, there wasn't.
When we lived in base housing, it was run by the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps
The
is
dry
the
cleaning
one,
was as well?
It was ran by Marines, yes, but they had civilian
okay.
workers.
Gotcha.
had,
So
like,
that wasn't a private company.
They called them like
Okay.
civil service employees.
Mm-hmm.
You're either active duty military or you're civil service working on the base, or you're like me. I was a NAF employee.
Mm-hmm.
Non-appropriated funds.
Not appropriated funds.
And, I mean, I know that every time we had a problem, or if my father didn't cut the grass, we had a Marine come to the house and tell us that the grass needed to be cut.
I remember that. I've
It
gotten
was
my butt
run-
chewed before as a 12-year-old for not cutting the grass when my dad was at work for something
But
like
it was
that.
the
So, yeah.
Marine Corps that was running base housing until probably in the 80s.
Yeah.
And then a civilian place out of Norfolk, Virginia took over.
Yeah. No, I thought maybe the dry cleaning company was a private company, but it sounds like it was something. It was a service that the Marine Corps was
It
offering.
was a
Gotcha.
NAFI employee. It was a NAF.
Gotcha. Okay.
I
Yeah. Wow.
honestly don't care about any of that stuff because to me,
Sure.
and I'm sure you agree, Brandon, it is the responsibility ultimately of the United States government to take care
Exactly.
of the people who are serving in uniform. And so if they think it's more efficient to contract with a private sector company, I have no problem with that. But the buck has to stop with the United States. They are the ones ultimately responsible for taking care of these people. And so if they contract with a private company and the private company can't afford to pay for all the harm it caused, then the United States needs to pay for it.
That's actually the point I was trying to make, is that I think that they do hire some of these private contractors for housing or food or whatever, and then when there's an issue, they push service members towards these private companies and shift the blame. When in reality, like you're saying, they're the ones who brought them on the installations and said, "This is what we're providing for you." That there should be responsibility that falls on to, military leadership, the Department of Defense, the U.S. government, to take care of service members, regardless of whether or not that private company is the issue. That should be bottom line. Your responsibility is to take care of service members, because service members at any point can be called up to deploy and potentially go lose their life for this country. So that is, I mean, if you can expect somebody and have the reasonable expectation that that person on a day-to-day basis is willing to give up their life for their country, then taking care of them and ensuring that they're taken care of and compensated for the things they have to endure and the things that their families have to endure, that should be the biggest no-brainer in the world. Like I said earlier, it's just a shame to hear something like this happen. But you had mentioned the community that you have online. I think that's a good thing. It's one of the things I was wondering about when you were talking before, is that, I'm glad to hear that you're not going through this alone, and that there's other people that you can lean on and reach out to and talk to, and so many people that are going through this. So that's good. I'm glad that you have that community online, even though it is a community that centers around something that's so terrible. But I'll have to check out the website, and I'll share it and put it in the show notes as well for everybody else to go and check that out, and any other information I can get to put in the show notes for people to go and find out. But is there I imagine that this is a long and potentially expensive process for people going through this. Is there a place that people can go and donate, offer help, or anything like that? Is that on that website, Virginia? No,
No, it's just mostly it's a sound off board, but you have to be careful about it. You just have to let people know what you got. They're just trying to support each other is what it
Gotcha.
is. Now, I am going to tell you one thing. I know that my case is Camp Lejeune water because I had a doctor after my transplant. He is a doctor working on this Camp Lejeune water stuff. And he told me, in no uncertain terms, he said, "You are a Camp Lejeune water survivor."
right.
When I had my liver transplant, there was 2 other people that were from Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville, other areas of the state. But
Yeah.
they were Camp Lejeune military.
Wow. No, that's
And to me, I think the military needs to step up and just say, "Hey, we did wrong. Come on, let's take care of these people."
yes. That should be the easiest thing in the world. I mean, I can't tell you how much time I've spent taking care of and finding things that cost a dime or 20 cents in the military because it got lost, out of my time that was taken away from me and my family. But, here we are, you're talking about literally people's lives, not a lost round out of a magazine during an exercise that we're spending 6 hours after, being on duty to go find. We're talking about your life, your children, your family members, other family members, things like that. And, if you can hold people accountable and take time away from them for something that costs 30 cents, right? Like, let's just say, these things don't match up here. The expectation you have of service members for accountability and integrity, it doesn't match. It certainly makes for a dangerous combination. It's certainly why I know a lot of people are getting very fed up with serving and the leadership that they see from people and have seen from people. Because if you expect this from me, but I can't expect the same morals and ethics from you, it's a very dangerous combination you're talking about here. So.
All they got to do is look out for us.
That's
They
it.
have to just take care of us.
Yeah. No, I agree. It makes me wonder too what else is going to come up we have military bases all over the world, and this involves there's when I was in Japan, there were Japanese people who worked on base. When I was in Germany, there were Germans who worked on base. When I was in England, there were English people that worked on base. It makes me wonder what other issues we're going to have that affected citizens of other nations as well, and what issues it may be caused and things like that. So this is what happens when people who are supposed to have integrity and hold themselves accountable don't. And you're left with things like this, of people that aren't taken care of, and people who've dedicated their lives to service to this country and supporting service members of this country. So it's a shame. Mr. Keller, I just wanted to open the floor to you. If you've got anything else you feel of relevance that we didn't talk about in this conversation that you wanted to bring up, that the floor was yours.
I appreciate that, Brandon. I'll pick up where you left off. Everybody agrees that we need to take care of people who risk their lives for this country. It's a bipartisan issue. And I want to say I sincerely believe, this is not just window dressing, that people like Secretary Hegseth, like President Trump, like General Bondi, I actually think that they do care about the people who wore the uniform. And they're not the ones who created this problem. They are not the ones who poisoned the water. They're not the ones who covered it up. So not only do I think they sincerely care about these people, but they have a golden political opportunity to clean up someone else's mess. They didn't do this, but Congress gave them the tools to fix this problem. They obviously should take that opportunity up and fix it.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is something that I know that I'm going to be talking about on our show very often. Every opportunity I get, we go live twice a week. And I know that I'll be bringing this up and pointing people's direction and attention at it, because the more people that are yelling about this, the more people that are reaching out to their congressmen and representatives, the more attention it gets, and hopefully the quicker it'll get resolved. And I appreciate you guys coming on the show, especially you, Miss Robinson, and everything that you've gone through. I'm so sorry to hear that you have gone through these things. You lost a child and a husband, and everybody else who's and not to mention all the sickness that you've had in your life. This is that's a terrible way to go about living and have to live. And I'm really sorry to hear that happened to you, and that and then to know that the people who are responsible for it aren't taking accountability or responsibility for it. That's even worse. Slap in the face.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us on,
Thank
Brandon.
you for doing this.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No brainer. And I'll let you guys know when this comes out. And again, like I said, you're more than welcome to come back as well, Ms. Robinson, or you too, Mr. Keller, if you want to come on our live show. We normally, when we are live, we can have up to a couple thousand people on with us at the same time. And this will air and do the same thing. We'll keep talking about this as well and drawing people's attention to it. So
please keep talking about it, because Camp Lejeune, the people who were stationed at Camp Lejeune all went to Pendleton too. Mm-hmm. They coincide with each other in Pendleton's in California. So please keep talking about this, because those people out there, they know what Camp Lejeune did to them. And there's a lot of people out in the West Coast. I mean, they just need to talk. Everybody needs to talk. They need to know about this. This is something that the government has done and poisoned us.
Yes. No, absolutely. This is going to go out everywhere, and I'm going to make a lot of content about this and put it out there and bring attention. And like I said, we'll talk about this on our live show. My co-host, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, he's an active duty Green Beret medic. So I know this is an issue that's dear to his heart as well, and he hates hearing about stories like this where service members and their family members are affected and in a way like this. And absolutely not going to let this go, just like we don't let go of a lot of other things that go on. And I appreciate both of your time, sincerely, especially you, Ms. Robinson, to come on and talk about this. And it takes a level of courage to talk about this, and especially when the things that you've gone through. So I commend you very much for being willing to talk about it and not letting something like this stop you, and everything you've gone through, stop you from talking about it.
No, I talk about this all the time, and I'm very proud of the fact that I'm a survivor.
Yeah,
because
it should be.
My idea is to go after Camp Lejeune and win.
Yes.
And we're losing too many people every day, because everybody's getting too weak. And what we all felt like is they were just waiting for us all to die off. I'm sorry, I'm not in the mood to die. I'm 68 years old and I want to stay strong.
Right.
As you can tell, Brandon, no one is stopping Miss Robinson.
No, I like it.
She's feisty.
Yeah. That's what you
Thank
need.
you.
Absolutely. Fighting spirit, certainly. Well, thank you guys both for your time. I will put links for information in the show notes for everybody listening. Please check those out. Join us on our live shows on Wednesday and Friday evenings where you can hear more about this. We'll talk about it, keep talking about it. And like I said, open invite to both of you guys if you'd like to come on and talk about it in front of people in a live format. But I appreciate both of your times. I hope that there's resolution in this and accountability and compensation for you and those who deserve it.
Thank you.
Brandon.